When I came to Hawaii 2 months ago, I had $800 to my name. I had just moved into my first apartment, single-handedly paid for by a painting that manifested intuitively from a little whisper within my heart. And the first check that I received from that painting was the exact amount to the hundreds of the deposit on the apartment that I had fallen in love with when I was looking for places to move into. And I knew I had to go for it. I knew that even though that was nearly all of my money at that time, I left and I spent pretty much the remaining amount of money that I had on the trip here to Hawaii with a few friends who invited me last minute, and I just knew I had to come here. I felt this unwavering pull, this sense of belonging to Hawaii, to this land, since I was a little kid. I remember growing up when I first had Instagram, I followed all of the kids who lived on North Shore of Oahu, and I fell in love with the simplicity of this lifestyle and the beauty that this place encompasses, and I just knew that I had to come here. Most people would never go somewhere and leave a check beneath their doormat for their landlord. I hope she's not watching this. For an amount of money for the next month's rent that they don't even have in their bank account. I came to Hawaii with $800 to my name, and on the last day of February, while I was here in Hawaii, I received a check from Etsy from my painting for nearly double my rent, and I transferred it over to my bank, and it went out the next day, and it wasn't there 24 hours earlier. I ended up flying back home to LA and felt as though my world had been flipped inside out. Nothing felt the same. Everything felt tainted and wrong and off, and I was so resistant to being there, and I was aching to come back to a place that I just fell in love with. I've never felt such a resounding inner peace any place else in the world but here in Hawaii, and I'm not going to go fully into that story. You can watch my other videos about Hawaii and my painting and all of the little miracles that led up to those experiences unfolding. But this is another story, and one that needs to be told. The only way for me to come back here was to find someone to cover my lease that I had on that apartment. And so I put a listing up on Zillow and on apartments.com, and I showed it to all these people, and it felt so off and it felt so wrong. And this was a space that was sacred to me. It was created from a painting that poured through me. Like, this place, my apartment in LA, it meant so much to me, and it felt so weird and it felt so off to be like trying to sell it to strangers. Whenever people would come over to look at it and I would talk it up, I guess, and just share it with them, it just felt not right, and I was just like, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not gonna keep showing it. I'm just gonna wait and trust. And I do yoga, but not as much as I should. And randomly one morning I woke up and something just told me to go to the Bhakti Shala, which is this donation-based studio in Santa Monica. And I went to yoga there, and I got to the class. It was a Reiki flow class, and there was a woman at the front who was doing a sound healing. And before the class started, we all kind of sat down and just shared our stories, where we were from, what we were doing, and I talked about how Hawaii had stolen a piece of my heart and how I was trying to move out here, currently living in Santa Monica, and looking for someone to cover my lease. And the woman at the front looked at me and she said, "My daughter and I are looking for a place to move into by March 31st. And I was looking to move by April, and I felt engulfed by just this wave of chills that swept through my body from head to toe, and we just looked at each other, and I said, "Please come over after this yoga class." And so sure enough, after the class, her and her daughter biked over and looked at my place, and her daughter took a step into my apartment and said, "Mom, I'm home." And I asked her permission to share a little bit of her story with you guys because I wanted to honor her and respect her, and I knew how powerful of an impact this would have on you, so she gave me permission to share it. I'm not going to share her name, but you know who you are, and I know you're watching this, so thank you. This woman and her daughter are the purest embodiment of strength and beauty that I've ever seen in someone. They are refugees here from the Czech Republic who escaped an abusive situation out there, and for the past 7 months, similar to my story, I guess, in a sense, they had been staying with friends and just people they met along the way in Los Angeles, and they have been seeking out a home, and just to make ends meet, she had been doing sound healing and some yoga here and there at different studios, but not making nearly enough to afford rent in LA, and they weren't even full citizens here yet. At times, everything just feels as though it's against you, but sometimes you have to risk everything for a dream that no one can see but you. I felt her courage. It was tangible when I looked at her, and when her and her daughter walked into that space, I just knew that they were going to end up there. I had no idea how, I had no idea why or when or how it would even be possible, but I just knew that they were going to make their home in mine. I called my landlord and I said, "I have someone for this space and I think you should meet them." And so she came over and met this beautiful woman and her 7-year-old daughter, and she agreed to sign the lease over to them. And just at this time, she received a gift of abundance from her father, whom she hadn't spoken to in a long time, to carry them into this home and to take care of rent while they were there. And in a matter of a few days, they were moving in and I was leaving. I love you so much, and I'm so proud of both of you, and I can't wait to see you again out here. They moved in before my ticket out of LA was booked. So for my last week or so in LA, I was technically homeless, and the first night that they were there, the first night they moved into my space, I packed everything up into this backpack right here and just started walking and went into a little vegan cafe to grab some food because I had just been packing my few things and like cleaning up the space for them, and I hadn't really eaten much that day, so I was pretty hungry, and so I went to this little vegan cafe called the Golden Mean down the street and got some food. And I had had places lined up for me to stay in the last 4 days I was going to be in LA. And that first night I reached out to a bunch of my friends, and either all of them were traveling or had something going on, and I didn't have anywhere to stay, and I thought to reach out to this one friend that was kind of a mutual friend through someone else I didn't know super well, and he was super sweet, and he texted me back and he said, "Yeah, you can crash at my place tonight. I am doing a meditation training tonight," or something magical like that. Like, he was just working that evening, and so he was like, I'll text you after work and you can Uber halfway to me, because he lived in Anaheim, which is a pretty far drive from LA. And so he said I could Uber halfway to him, and then he would meet me wherever the Uber dropped me off and pick me up and take me to spend the night at his place for that first night. Something you will come to know about me is that I am not a detail-oriented person whatsoever, so my Claire brain didn't think to ask him what time he would be getting off work, and so I just replied and I was like, great, just text me when you're done with work and I'll be here, and then when you text me I'll just Uber to you. And so I go to this little vegan cafe, I order like the yummiest burrito ever and I eat it, and around this time it's getting to be like 8 o'clock, and so I text him, I'm like, hey, should I start Ubering to you? And I don't get a response yet. And so at 9 I text him again and I'm like, hey, was there a place you wanted to meet up? And I still don't hear back, and I call him and his phone is off. Before I knew it, it was 10 o'clock, and the owner of that cafe walks up to me and he says, I'm sorry, but we're closing. You're gonna have to leave. It is so incredibly humbling to go from having your own home, from having your own place to live, to not having anywhere to go nearly overnight. And it just causes you, I guess, to remember how temporary and fluid everything is. And in this moment, of course, I wasn't thinking this. I was like panicking, and I called my mom and I was sobbing on the phone with my mom in this little cafe at night, and I was like, Mom, I don't know what to do. And my mom was like, you can always go and stay in a hotel. And I was just like, I don't want to have to stay in a hotel after like leaving my apartment for the first time. And I know that sounds so silly, I guess so privileged, but I just like, I didn't want to go stay in a hotel. Like, I wanted to be with a friend. Like, this was a major transition, and I just needed someone to be there and to just hold space, and that I could just seek solace within, I guess. And I'm just on the phone with my mom crying, and this girl who was working in the cafe walks up to me and she lightly touches my shoulder and looks at me and she says, do you need a place to stay tonight? Nicole, if you're watching this, I love you. Thank you. I was still on the phone with my mom, and so I looked at her and I was like, just a second, like, I'm on the phone. And my mom overheard what she said, and my mom said, you're literally being handed an opportunity right now to receive, to overcome your edge of independence and not accepting help from other people. I am an only child, and my entire life nearly, it's been quite impossible for me to reach out and ask for help or accept help from other people. Like, at times it serves me to do everything on my own, but we're all codependent on one another, and my need to do everything on my own is something that I'm slowly learning to let go of. And my mom said, did she have good intentions? Like, can you tell that she's a kind person? And I could tell that she was. She had a pure heart, and I said, okay, I don't have any other options. My friend's phone was still off. I tried to reach him a few more times and he wasn't replying, and by this time it was like 10:30. And so I surrendered and I told her that I would go with her. And she shared with me that for the past 5 or so months she has been living out of Airbnbs, just trying to make ends meet by working at this little vegan cafe. And she said, I don't have a home for you to stay in, but I have an Airbnb I'm staying in North Hollywood, and you're welcome to come with me. And so I got into her car with her, and we drove out to this little Airbnb. And the woman who owned the Airbnb was born and raised on Oahu. And I told her that I was planning on moving out here, and her face just lit up, and she told me that I would find my place out here, for she had as well. I just fell asleep feeling just like Wow, life is fucking beautiful, and I love people so much. And I woke up the next morning and I looked up local vegan places to grab food at, and this little cafe showed up, and it looked healthy. They had decent reviews, so I decided to go there. I get into an Uber and I go to this little vegan cafe I found on my phone and order some oatmeal and like a juice or something. And lately I've just felt this overwhelming desire to share and to just pour out my story to everyone I meet, like random strangers, Uber drivers. Like, I just know I need to share this. I just feel so called to, and it's so interesting because I spent so much of my life being this shy little kid who would like never raise her hand in class and never speak her mind and would always just embody what everyone around her was doing, and was so reliant on the opinions and validation of other people to feed her own self-worth. And I feel like I've just pushed past that, and I'm just like, no, like my story carries so much beauty and power within it, and it needs to be shared with people. And so I was sitting in this little vegan cafe, and I was the only person in there, and I had this backpack sitting next to me with all my stuff in it. And the woman looks at it, who was standing behind the counter, and she was like, "Oh, did you just get here?" And I was like, "No, I'm actually leaving." She was like, "Where to?" I was like, "Hawaii." And we just kind of got talking, and she ended up coming over and sitting down by me, and I just shared everything with her, from having my laptop break down and having this intuitive energy surface within me, which brought this painting to life, which paid for an apartment, which carried me to Hawaii, which I fell in love with, which brought me here, sitting in this cafe right now. And she looked at me and she grabbed hold of my hands and she said, "Thank you. You've restored my faith in this world." And throughout this whole conversation, I hadn't yet introduced myself, and she reaches out her hand to me and she says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Claire." And she looks at me and she says, "Michelle." Her name was Michelle. One of the things that I was seeking to sell before I came here, because I knew I could easily replace it and shipping it over would probably cost a lot more than it would be to just buy a new one, was my bike. And it was my last day in LA, in Venice, and I was walking on Abbot Kinney because I just wanted to get some rings. I love rings. Like, I'm always just like covered in jewelry because I feel like it's a way of honoring your body and treating it as art, almost, in a sense. Like, I just love wearing jewelry, and Hawaii is definitely lacking a little bit when it comes to really beautiful jewelry. Like, LA is the place to shop. I'm not that much into shopping. Like, I buy all my clothes from thrift stores. This shirt, I'm gonna say this before anyone asks, but this shirt is literally a scarf that I found somewhere. Like, I don't really care that much about clothes, but I love jewelry so much. It's become like a new little passion of mine. And so I was walking through Abbot Kinney and looking to potentially pick up a few more rings. I actually ended up getting that one right there. It's turquoise. I really hope I got that right. If I didn't, I'm gonna be really embarrassed. And also the sun is setting, so that's why the lighting's a little bit weird, but I'm gonna fix this just a little bit. Okay, that is a bit better. Anyways, back to the story. So I'm walking down Abbot Kinney in Venice, just seeking out little beautiful rings to buy, and I have my bike with me, and I was planning on taking it to the bike shop later on that day. I had the lock with me, so I was kind of parking it outside of a shop, locking it up, going into the shop, coming out, walking it further, like parking it, locking it up, on and on and on. And I'm very careless with my belongings, and I just kind of was throwing my key to the bike in my backpack. And so when I went to get the key out, every time I kind of have to dig around and like burrow around in my backpack to find it. And so I came out of one shop and I was digging around in my backpack trying to find this key, and as I'm doing it, this homeless man comes up to me, and I could tell that his intentions were not pure. I don't know if he was perhaps mentally unstable or like, I don't know. There was something very off about him, and he kind of came at me and was like, I just felt very uncomfortable and kind of panicked and ran into the nearest store. And I get in and I'm like, hey, is it okay if I just hang out in here for a little while? Like, this guy is outside and I just don't feel safe. And the girl was so sweet. I feel like as girls we kind of always stick up for each other in situations like that. And she was like, of course, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. And she glances outside and she's like, oh, I like your bike, by the way. And I was like, oh, thank you. I am trying to actually get rid of it because I'm moving to Hawaii in a few days. I love saying that. I love saying that to people. The whole time I was in LA, people are like, what are you up to? Just like, oh, I'm moving to Hawaii. Anyways, I told her, I was like, I'm moving to Hawaii in a few days. I'm trying to get rid of it. And she was like, no way. I just moved to Venice a few days ago and I've been looking to buy a cruiser just like that one. I was like, really? She was like, yes. How much for your bike? And I was like, $250. And she was like, okay. And she wrote me a check, dropped it off, picked up my bike, and rode off down the street into the stars on my bike. Not really into the stars. I just get very poetic and metaphorical with everything. But it was nighttime, so there were stars in the sky, and she like rode off in that direction. Maybe someday we'll be able to ride off into the stars. What felt like a few seconds somehow turned into a few days, and before I knew it, I was flying back to Colorado to say goodbye to my mom before coming here. The whole time I was in LA, something that I was just aching for and missing was a cat. And that may sound so silly to some of you, but I grew up with pets my entire life. When I was younger, I used to want to be a vet when I grew up. Like, this is why I resonated so deeply with veganism, is because I love animals more than I do most people. I just feel such a deep connection to animals, and the whole time I was in LA, I didn't have that companion. I didn't have that little critter to come home to and talk to about my day and cuddle with at night. Like, I was just missing that companionship and that energy. There is this beautiful rescue organization where I grew up called the Fort Collins Cat Rescue, and if you're in Fort Collins, go there. It's the most beautiful little sanctuary for just the most beautiful cats you'll ever see. I was just like, Mom, I want to go to the Fort Collins Cat Rescue and just pet cats like all day. And I was like, okay, we'll do it. And so we were kind of in that area of town, and I looked them up and they had closed that day. And I was really bummed because it was the last day that I would have been able to go there and spend time with cats. I'm just telling all of these little stories because they're all little synchronicities, and I love sharing stories of synchronicities because life is just magical, and I want to share these moments with you. Some of these may seem random and sporadic, but it'll all tie together in the end. So thank you for being patient in the randomness of this story. I was driving with my mom, and I was like, they're closed. And Mom was like, it's okay, let's just go to a park and let's just walk around barefoot and just hang out in a park and just be in nature for a while. We get to the park and there's cats at the park. Like, who takes cats to parks? Literally no one takes their cat to a park. Like, I know some people walk their cats, but no one, like, it's like, hey, you know what? For our family excursion of the day, let's all take our cats to a park. Like, that just doesn't happen. And these people had 3 ragdoll. If you know what ragdoll cats are, they're the kind that just like flop over and like lay on you and are just the chillest cats ever, basically, in this kind of netting enclosure. And I go up to them and I'm like, is this real? Like, do you do this frequently? And they're like, yeah, we take our cats out to parks all the time, and just they like being out in nature and in the grass. And I was just sitting there, and my mom was still in the car finishing up a phone call or something, and she walks over and she just looks at me and she was like, you manifested cats. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. So that was another little magical experience that unfolded in this past month. My mom is literally one of the most beautiful humans that I've somehow become lucky enough to not only share this life with, but to call my family. And these past few years have not been easy for her. Ever since my parents got divorced, she hasn't been incredibly financially abundant, and she has just been living with friends for the last 7 or so years and packing up all of her belongings and then going to the next place every few months, then going to the next place. And I was staying with her at the people's house that she's currently living with in Colorado, and she told me that they were planning on moving to Arizona in a few months, and she didn't know where she would be. And she told me that for just an instant she felt this fear rise up within her, and then the next moment she realized that she was being given a gift and an opportunity. And I looked to her and I told her that I felt as though she has fallen into a routine that has not pushed her to grow over these past few months. She's fallen into this safety net that is limiting the powerful, just goddess, incredible woman that she is. And I told her that this is the most beautiful gift that she could have ever received. She called me on the phone right after I touched down in LAX, after leaving Colorado right before flying here, and she told me that watching me leave everything behind in exchange for a dream inspired her to do the same. And she told me that she was going to get rid of nearly everything and go wherever she felt led to go, and potentially even come out here and be with me. It has been an honor to grow alongside with you, and thank you for being my rock and being my foundation and being everything that I aspire to be and everything that I am in the same breath. I love you so, so, so much, to the moon and the stars and back and in between. I never want what I create to be driven by money, because then it automatically becomes inauthentic. And even though I was taken care of so beautifully every single time my rent was due for those, I think I was in that apartment for about 3 months, but each time rent was due, it would literally be a check that I'd received from Etsy maybe a week, or in the case of February, a few days before, and then the money would go out, and then it would come back in. Like when I released the postcards, those postcards, like, you guys literally were able to carry me through those last few months in LA. Like, I cannot express in words how grateful I am for you, and the fact that I'm able to create just from the stream of intuition within me is just so beautiful and so powerful. But the whole time I was in LA, it was like I was always taken care of, and I was able to afford that space in the sense that I was paying rent each month, but it was definitely held together by bits and pieces. And in coming here, I was willing to give up that serenity of having my own space, because I'm an introvert and I love being alone. I love spending time by myself. Like, even though it was in LA and even though it was in a place that I didn't necessarily want to be in, having my own apartment for the last few months has been so healing and so grounding. And in coming here, Hawaii is cheaper than LA. By the way, for those of you wondering, LA, especially Santa Monica where I was, it's like probably nearly one of the most expensive places in the US to live. And we somehow did it, but in coming here I was like, I'm willing to exchange that comfort so that I don't have to worry about money. I was looking to potentially like rent out a room here, or just find a cheap living situation. And I just want to note that in my last video when I talked about moving into a treehouse, I was entirely joking and I was not serious about that whatsoever. But I'm currently living in a treehouse. Let's just take a second. It's locked. Okay. The sun is setting, so it's super bright, but just take this in. So this is where I stand, and this is where I'm currently living. This is a tree, and this is a house. That's the ocean. Be so careful what you wish for, because it will happen inevitably one way or another. I'm sitting on the floor now, so I'm gonna grab a pillow so it's a bit more comfortable, because these videos last like 2 hours. By the time I edit it, it's usually like an hour and a half or so, and then I usually cut out some unnecessary ramblings. So I need to be comfy in order to do this. Okay, where was I? Yes, I'm currently living in a treehouse with a human being that I met in the local grocery store here. It was the same night that I met the man who gave us these shells. And in coming back here, like I told you guys in my last video, I essentially had no plan whatsoever. I wasn't really fearful because I just feel so safe and nurtured and just grounded here, and I just know I was meant to come here. Everything aligned effortlessly in order for me to come here, and so I didn't really have fear associated with coming here. I just didn't really have a plan. I just got this little message one day to text Ashley, is the name of the girl who lives here, and I said, hey, so I'm coming into town late April, and is it okay if I stay with you for a little bit? She was like, yeah. My flight got into Honolulu around like 6 p.m. and so by the time I came here and drove here, it was dark. A kind man who is living here lugged all my stuff up the mountain, and I am so sorry because currently all my belongings are in this backpack that I showed you earlier. So this is all I own, and also, oh gosh, we're doing this. This is the other half of what I own, and literally everything in this suitcase, I'm just going to show you guys like how massive this is. So it's like that. It's pretty big. And everything in this is basically all my moon goddess prints, because I knew it would be cheaper to bring them with me on the airplane rather than mail them all here, which the weight limit for the airplane is 100 pounds. And this suitcase, this giant one, was miraculously somehow 97 pounds exactly when they weighed it. And they said that it wouldn't have been able to go on the flight if it had been over 100. So the kind man who was living here lugged all my stuff up the mountain. I carried my backpack, but he lugged that suitcase with all the moon goddess prints and postcards, and she was in it as well. She made her way out here. So I felt terrible, and it was dark, and I was just walking up this mountain and just like walking and walking and walking, and I was like, are we there yet? And Ashley, the girl I was staying with, was like, no, not yet. And I woke up the next morning and I looked out and I saw that view, and I was like, holy shit, I'm literally living in a treehouse. And she found this place on Craigslist, I'm fairly sure, when she was looking to come out here, and basically she cleans the other tree houses. It's kind of like an Airbnb setup for a place to stay. So not only did I have a safe refuge, a safe landing space, I wasn't just renting a room from a random person, but it's free. It's not even like it's cheap. Like, I'm currently living in a tree house in Hawaii for free. What? Like, what? I just have these moments where I just am like sitting up here and I'm just looking around and I'm just looking at her and just reading messages from you guys, and I just like, holy shit, like I don't even know. Like, at this point, gratitude doesn't even come close to touching or expressing what I feel on a daily basis. And for the past few weeks, I've been peeing in a jungle and been carrying ice up from the other Treehouse bungalows to make smoothies in the morning because there's no bathroom in here and there's no freezer. And it's definitely been an adjustment. Again, it's been so humbling to go from paying rent in LA to working for a place to stay. This isn't a permanent situation. I'm still looking for a place on the North Shore to call my own, simply because this is a perfect landing ground for someone who isn't sure where they're going or just like needs a place to stay. But I have so much I want to pursue and so much that I want to do, and like there's just so much. Like, I'm just gonna say this right now because even though this is crazy and like who knows what will come of it though, and I'm just gonna speak it into existence right now. I want to start my own jewelry line. I want to create stones, or not create them, Earth creates them, but create rings, especially in like necklaces with these sacred stones, and share them with you so you can literally wear like pieces of my fingers. Like, I get so many questions about my rings and where I get them, and honestly most of them are pretty cheap and they leave green marks on my fingers. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but it's not super high quality jewelry, but I want to make like high quality jewelry that won't cost like freaking an insane amount of money, like a lot of it does, so that you guys can share this art of like body decoration with me. Like, I want to create my own website, and like there's so much that I want to do, and there's so much that's whirling through my mind right now. There is 3 to 4 hours of work here required a day, and so that is one of the reasons that this video hasn't gotten up sooner, is because checkout is around 11 for guests who stay here, and so then you're cleaning from like 11 to 2 or 2:30 or 3. In my extra time I go hiking or adventuring. It's been such a gift and I'm so grateful for it, but I know that my energy could be so much more impactful spent doing this, like creating, sharing, making more art. Like, there's so much I want to be doing. So for the time being, I'm peeing in a forest and cleaning tree houses for a place to live, but who knows where we'll be a month from now. Life is crazy. I wanted to address something in this video, and this video will literally probably be like an hour long, but that's okay because I know some of you guys like that and I appreciate that. Thank you. The custom paintings. Okay, so when I released the idea of doing custom paintings in my last video, it was because I felt almost drained by sending out so many orders, and I was like thinking in my head, what if I was just doing custom paintings for people? Then I could just like paint and send out a few paintings and not be doing like so many orders on top of one another. Because for the last month or so I was in LA, I was just pretty much writing postcards and sending out orders all day into the night, and it was beautiful and it was wonderful and it was like an experience that I needed to have, but at the same time it drained my energy to create more and to paint more. And so that was kind of the root of the intention behind it, of like creating something that's sacred, that's like just between us. And I got so many requests, so thank you for those of you who took the time to write and send me letters. The words you guys say, it's so beautiful and they just touch my heart, and it gives me so much hope, because I know I'm just saying all these words, but the only reason that you're resonating with them is because you're recognizing a piece of yourself in me. There's something in me that you see in yourself. So every kind word that you have to say about me is literally just how you see yourself, and it gives me so much hope. I was reading through these orders and I was just beginning to feel a little bit overwhelmed because each letter was so beautiful and touched my heart so deeply, and I was like, how am I gonna say no to these people? Like, I got hundreds of orders and there was no way that I could do a custom painting for every single person. Like, a painting alone usually takes me like 20 or so hours. It depends. The moon goddess just poured out of me in like a few. But Isla and some other ones I feel like would take me longer, and so I was like, I don't know how to turn some people away and say yes to other ones. And I reached out to Charlotte, the beautiful woman who was in my last video, for just some advice, and she said, I'm being asked to rely on my talent over trust. And it hit me so hard, because I don't have talent. Like, I'm not a painter, I'm not an artist. I've taken a few art classes, like the ones that were required back in middle school or elementary school, but I don't know the first thing about painting. And I was reading some of these messages and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna create this, or like, I don't know, what if I make something and like it doesn't resonate with you. Like, I'm sure you guys are so sweet that you would love anything, but it's just like, I felt as though I was taking on the burdens of other people and being asked to create something beautiful from it. And I just began to feel so overwhelmed, and I just realized, like, everything I've created up until this point has manifested intuitively. It's not been tainted with thought. It's not been someone else's vision translated through my hands. And like, this moon goddess piece, she became such a symbol of the divine feminine reawakening all over the world. Like, there's nearly over 1,000 of her that have flown out all over this world. That alone just like blows my mind, because I know artists who struggle to sell a few pieces. I've never painted before in my life, and she just came through me, and like, I was just engulfed in this passion and this creativity when I was making her, and it just happened. And reading what some of you were asking for, it was like, I don't know how exactly I would do this, and I started getting all intellectual and in my head, like, what if it's not good enough? And true creative freedom is not attached to any expectation. It's not tied to an end result. And regardless of what I create, it's not really me creating it. Like, it's something moving through me that's breathing life into my imagination, and not even thoughts in my head. Like, it's just something coming through me that's creating these pieces. And no matter what I create, it's going to resonate with one of you, because it's not being tainted by our thoughts. It's coming from something far beyond us. It's being sourced from a place of divine inspiration and creativity. And I've just realized, when we created Isla, Charlotte didn't even know we were filming that video. I literally just went over to her house, and she walked out of her house, like, had just woken up in sweatpants. And I was like, I need to create. I haven't painted in months, and like, every bone in my body is like aching to make something again. And so she's like, okay, let's do it. And we hardly talked the whole time we were painting. Like, during that video, we were nearly quiet the entire time. I just said, like, I want it to be something beautiful and feminine with some sort of lotus flower. And this came through. She hardly fits on the screen. I've decided that from this point on, I'm going to be selling limited prints of every painting I do. That way, I'm not feeling bogged down or feeling as though I'm like draining a certain piece. I'm constantly moving on. I'm constantly trying new things and doing new things. So a week ago, I ordered prints of Isla from the same little print shop in Venice that I got the moon goddess piece done at, and they arrived last night. There are 100 of this size. Some of you guys asked me for like a size comparison, so these are the small sizes, and they did such a beautiful job. Like, these prints are nearly as beautiful as the original, if not even more. Like, I am blown away. Thank you, Shantae and John at the print shop. I love you guys. You're magical. And this is the large size, so you can kind of see that size. And there are 100 small and 100 large available. And this way, for those of you who receive this piece, you are one of 200 people in the entire world that has it. And if you feel drawn to have her in your homes, I'll link my Etsy shop down below. It's always linked below, but I'll comment it as well. The other day, I went snorkeling in the ocean here for the first time. And initially, I got into the water and I was kind of in the shallow region, I guess. And I saw this really long piece of trash just kind of aimlessly floating through the water, and I reached out and grabbed it and kind of bunched it up in my hands and got out and put it back in my backpack. There's a lot of discarded waste from fishing boats that patrol around this area, and so it might have been from one of those boats. For whatever reason, it was in the ocean, and I just knew I had to take it out. And I wasn't done snorkeling just yet, so I got back into the water and I began to swim. And I just felt the current like pulling me farther and farther out. Like, I probably shouldn't have gone as far as I did. I probably swam out about 200 yards or 300 yards until the reef stopped and the ocean began. And I was swimming and I saw this little figure move in the depths below me. And it got closer and swam up to the surface, and it was a sea turtle, and it looked at me, and it was like this close to my face, and it just looked in my eyes, and then it just swam along the surface with me for like 2 minutes, which may not sound like a long time, but when you're swimming with a wild animal that long and you're that close to it and it's just there with you, like, time dissolves. And I felt not human in that moment. Like, I just laid in the ocean after it scurried along on its way, and I just felt like this form, this body, like just dissolving into the water beneath me, and I just felt this interconnection with all beings. Like, I look outside at these trees and I see myself in them. I look at the sand and I see myself in the sand. I lay in the ocean and I feel the water, and I just imagine that I am everything that this water is touching. And I'm realizing that as my consciousness expands and as I continue to grow and evolve and change and become who I was meant to be and remember who I am and return to that divine place within me, my experiences encompasses that expansion. At first, when I went to LA, I had $500 and I was living with people I met along the way, and I was so lost at that time. And I was so small, and I was so shrunken in, and I was so caging this inner light within me, and I've just realized, like, I've realized I've gotten caught on a necklace. I've just realized, like, I'm done holding back who I am. I am done holding back my truth. I am done resisting who I am. And the other day I was driving back, and I was in Allie's car, and she was playing Trevor Hall. He already melts my heart, so I was already getting teary-eyed because of that, but I just felt all this love just swell up in my heart for who I am. Like, I love you, Claire. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of us collectively, what we've done, what we've achieved, and I'm tired of burying my story, and I'm going to pour, and I'm going to speak my truth, and I do not care any longer about judgments from other people. I'm no longer going to suppress who I am. I am going to carry my story because I know that it's powerful, and I know that it holds meaning, and I know that these synchronicities and that these little essences of divinity that I continue to stumble upon, like, they're not random, and they have a purpose and they have a place. And I still have fear. I still have these moments where I get swept up into my ego and into my own head, but I'm no longer consumed by it, and I no longer associate who I am with these limitations that I was programmed to believe in. I remember when I first made my Instagram account ever, and I think at the time I had like 200 followers. Like, no one knew about it. It was still a secret. I was still kind of keeping it on the down low in a sense, and I got a message from someone, and it popped up on my screen, and I was on my way driving to PacSun where I was currently working, and I pulled over, and the person said that I inspired them to go vegan, and I just felt this weight had been lifted, and I called my mom and I was crying. A few weeks later, I quit my job at PacSun. Around the same time, it was my senior year, and I don't recommend doing this. I'm not promoting skipping school, but I just lost interest in literally all of my classes except a few, like psychology I loved, but I failed like 3 classes my senior year, and I was always a straight A student. I was always very academically driven, but I would rather spend time writing these Instagram captions and just like pouring my heart into this. I was just engulfed in this like wave of creative passion and energy, and it was just infiltrating every ounce of my being. And I don't know if you guys, how long some of you have been with me. Back when I first made my Instagram, I was literally just writing and writing and writing, and I was doing like 4 posts a day of just these captions. And I went back and I was reading through some of them the other day, and I've just realized that I've always been this person, and I just lost myself. I just forgot who I was. This is a photo of me and my mom the day of graduation. And I wrote, How do you know you're on the right path? This question is essentially flawed in nature because as humans we are in a state of perpetual evolution, of change. We all act as though we know what we're doing, but the truth is most of us are blindly stumbling through life. We simply go through the motions constructed by traditional norms, conforming our path to the idea of success developed by a consumerism-driven society and rich and power-hungry individuals, and are often left feeling empty, as if there is something more lying just ahead that we could never quite grasp. A mirage. This elusive ideal is happiness. We seek to cultivate happiness through materialistic achievements, job promotions, climbing the corporate ladder, buying a new car, etc. But the issue with this is that happiness is a state of being. It's not tangible. It's not determined by external factors. You cannot hold happiness in your hands or buy it at your local market. It lies within your mindset and the way you perceive the world. Through aligning your passions with your actions, through pursuing what you love every day, I have experienced firsthand what can manifest when you allow your intuition to carve out your path and let your spirit take control for a little while. When people ask me what my aspirations are in life, I respond with a simple, to be happy. Yesterday marked the end of one road of my life, but also the beginning of one with infinite potential and endless opportunities. The truth is that I'm not exactly sure where I'm headed, or what my life will look like 10 years from now. All I know is that I don't want to live an apathetic, monotonous life. I want to plunge into the depths of the unknown, to be free. My future is not interlaced with doubt or fear. It's saturated in bliss, in peacefulness, and exuberance, and I'm taking you with me. I wrote that May 29th, 2016. At the time, I didn't even know I was going to be going to LA. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what my path was. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is that I had something, and I want you guys to know the first step is always the most difficult. The hardest part of this entire journey for me, people ask me how I got started. It was literally choosing my purpose over the opinions of others and making that Instagram account. When I first made it, it was a secret and I didn't want anyone to know about it. And somehow it turned into this. It turned into me living in Hawaii in a treehouse for nothing. It was carried by a promise I made to a little girl within me to always believe in her dreams. And I want you to know that if you surrender to your divine purpose here on earth, if you listen to your intuition and allow it to guide you, you will be carried and you will be taken care of. I remember when I first made that Moon Goddess piece and I biked out to the little art shop in Venice, and the guy rang up the total of the art supplies I bought to create it, and it came to over $400. And at that time I felt this seize up of my ego and of my fear and of all this doubt. Like, why are you spending $400 on art supplies when you could hardly afford this room you're staying in? Like, why are you doing this? Like, this is stupid, this is pointless, like, bike home, leave the store. But I was like, no, like, I need to create this. And what has come from that piece, what has come from that single decision has been more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. The majority of the world is driven by fear and operated by lack. They forget that they are of this universe. You don't even have to place your trust in this universe because it literally is what you are. This is why we are conditioned to suppress our sensitivity, because once you expand to feel the interconnection between all beings, once you see yourself in every single human being and see love in everyone that surrounds you and feel this surge of energy begin to rise up within you, you can no longer be controlled. You can no longer be told what to do because you're no longer being driven by fear that's programmed into us from an incredibly young age. You transcend the illusion that what you are is the collective of the external, that what you are is what you can accomplish, that what you are is how much money you make, that what you are is what you look like, this body, this form. Girls are so insecure about their bodies and so insecure about their looks. It's like, this is not who you are. Like, what you are is divine, and you were put here, you were placed here with a sacred gift that you can only offer this world through listening to your intuition, through surrendering to the divine power within all of us, because the moment that you let go of fear, you become infinite. If you feel lost, if you feel fearful, if you feel confused or like you aren't where you're supposed to be, keep going, because you're intuitively drawing experiences inward that will cause your edges to crumble, that will cause you to feel things. It's human nature to feel. It's beautiful to feel. Like, when is the last time you let yourself cry? Or when is the last time you let yourself laugh? When is the last time you painted something just to create it, not because there's attachment or expectation tied to it? When is the last time you sang? Like, I hadn't sang in such a long time till I wrote that song with Kevin, and like, I have a beautiful voice. I love my voice. Like, why was that something I suppressed for so long? Why did I hide beneath all these layers for so long? Like, why did it take me this long to like get out of my fucking shell and just like be who I am? Your purpose is not your job. Your purpose is not anything beyond yourself. Your purpose is literally just to be who you are in each moment, and remember who you are, and to return to that divine place within you, because you will be carried. I'm learning to rely on guidance from this internal place within me, from source rather than from my thoughts. I'm learning to surrender so full-heartedly into my intuition that fear is like no longer part of who I am. I'm no longer driven by it. I no longer operate by it. Like, and the reason it took me so long to do this video is because of my need for perfectionism of my ego. And it's like, I was looking to buy a drone before I posted this, because I was like, I want this to be perfect. Like, YouTube is more important to me even than Instagram, because YouTube is like real. It's like, here, you're here with me, you're listening to these words, you somehow watch hour-long videos that I post, and it's just like, I fucking love you. Like, you carried me here, and I wanted to create something beautiful for you. And so I was being so hard on myself, and I was like putting it off. And last night I pulled a card that I'm gonna read. It's the Rumi Oracle card deck, and the card I pulled last night was Beyond the Threshold of Fear. And I woke up this morning and there was a rainbow outside, and I knew it was time to share. How I celebrate you. After so long away from home, you are finally returning. Beyond the threshold of fear, you dispense all your doubts, hesitations, cautions, and tentativeness. You are visiting as though for the first time, and yet somehow also remember deep in your sacred heart. No more shall fear hold you in its thrall. You are becoming able to observe it, to witness it, to have compassion for it rather than resistance. Oh, what a spiritual marathon you have been running. Now the end is in sight. You are drinking the sacred waters to replenish you from your journey. The cups are pushed into your hands by encouraging angels as you approach the blessed finish line. Rest now before a new adventure begins from a completely different state of being. You have broken through a barrier from within your consciousness or from an external set of circumstances that have held you back from taking the steps you're now taking or just about to take. These steps may feel strange, new, uncertain, and exciting. Your mind may not have received the memo that fear-based existence is no longer in operation for you. It may need a loving, tender, reassuring, firm update that the relationship you have with fear is now rather different. You are now the witness, not the victim. Your consciousness is strong enough to hold fear and compassion. You don't collapse beneath its weight. So give your mind a rest. Get set to fly. Test your wings. You'll find them enthusiastic for flight and ready to learn to ride the currents, purpose-built, soaring for great heights. Trust in your vision. Without the murky filter of fear, it is clear and sharp. You can now see what is meant for you, what is true for you, what is beckoning you forward now. Take the running leap. There is no darkness and light anymore, just life, living free and clear. I'll be running and flying beside you. Let's rise together. This oracle was on page 114. My apartment number was 114. The last video I posted was 44 minutes and 11 seconds long. Today when I was cleaning the cabins, I wanted to go for a quick swim. When I got out of the water, I looked at my phone and it was 4:11. You have to be willing to pay attention to these little synchronicities. The universe is literally sending you these gifts, and so many people are so closed off and have so many blinders on and so many masks and what they're suppressing, and they aren't able to recognize these little gifts you've been given. Like, I'm just going to show you guys something really fast. It's getting kind of dark in here. This camera is actually incredible in dark light. But look at this painting. Okay? This painting was hanging before I got here. And I walked into Ashley's place and I was like, why does this painting look so familiar? And then I looked through my old photos from Oahu and I saw this photo. It's the exact same pose, like to a T. I feel as though things are manifesting and unfolding before I even wish them into existence, and I realize maybe that's the secret. I feel like it's all within is so oversaid to the point where it loses its meaning, but what if it is all within? What if literally everything you are seeking is within, but there's just this chasm of fear and emptiness between you and source, between you and love, and between you and this abundance that is your birthright, separating you from it, so you aren't able to reach it, you aren't able to get there. It's like, at first things are manifesting like within a few months, within a few weeks, and now it's like instant, like the cats, the bike, like everything. Like, I feel so loved, I feel so taken care of. I was only able to come here because I allowed my own truth to surface, and this world responds to authenticity. It responds to the divinity and the love within each of us, and I am so blessed that I can fall in love with a place and just come here without giving it a second thought. I am so fortunate to even be able to do this, but I was only able to do this because I was in an environment that we created together where this could surface, and so I want to be this for you. I want to be a place you can come to and speak your truth and speak your mind and just be who you are, so that you can return home as well. I love you. Thank you. We are home.